I just absolutely love Matchlock Ashigaru. If my nightmares are filled with enemy bow samurai, my nirvana is filled with just Matchlock Ashigaru. I'll be rating units based on their accessibility in campaign, their research requirements and cost, and their overall effectiveness on the battlefield. Number 5, Nodachi Samurai. They have an excellent charge. They don't lose that much potency as they take casualties, not as much as other units, again because of their charge. So as the unit takes casualties, you can just stretch it out into the widest line you can get and charge again. So as the battle goes on, their potency doesn't decrease as much as other units. It also counters Yari units and Naginatas, which are a very common unit class, the most common unit class, and of course we can't forget Banzai, which you can either use on the charge, which seems like the more conventional thing, but there's also delaying Banzai and popping it when your unit's about to rout, so they end up fighting to the very last man. It's kind of cheesy, but hey, if it works, it works. Now, the disadvantages, because they're so reliant on the charge, it's micro-intensive, but honestly, the better you get at the game, the better you're gonna get at micromanagement, and Nodachi Samurai are gonna pull away from Katana Samurai. They have a higher kill ceiling, they have more potential than Katana Samurai because charge bonus is really important in this game. It has a very deterministic effect, has a sort of snowball effect on units, so you get a good charge off and the enemy unit takes losses and they're closer to routing, and then you do that multiple times over, and then your Nodachi Samurai is gaining experience faster than it's losing it, so it has a very multiplicative effect on the course of battle. It also gets shredded by AI archers, so you'll need to take that into account. I mean, the AI archers, we've already talked about how ridiculous their bonuses are, and I absolutely hate them. So you're gonna have to keep that in mind in using this unit. You can't just charge it out in the open and expect it to do very well, especially considering bow samurai spam on higher difficulties. Also, unlike Katana Samurai, which can be gotten from turn 1 or turn 3, depending on which faction you are, they require research and buildings to get them, first of all, and if you want Banzai, you're gonna have to do some more research, so it's gonna be quite a while before you can use Nodachi Samurai to their full potential. Number 4, Fire Rockets. They have long range, they're devastating against any target, and they're great for causing chain routes, so you can combine them with a Yari wall and with matchlocks and with cavalry, so you have your Yari wall pinning down an enemy force, doing your best to blob up enemy units as much as possible, then having your cavalry come in for a flanking charge, having guns pour down on them, and then you add the morale debuff from artillery fire, and you can get some pretty spectacular chain routes. They're also really good for hunting cavalry, for killing cavalry, since cavalry don't have a knockdown animation, so if they either die or they don't. The only reason this unit isn't any higher on the list is the building requirements. You need a top tier gunpowder building, you need the arsenal, which even if you rush the tech, it's gonna be until about 1558 or 1560 before you can recruit them. It's gonna be a while before you can incorporate them into your strategies. On top of that, they're quite micro intensive. Because of how little ammunition they have 5 volleys. You're gonna have to micromanage them. You usually want to turn off fire at will and pick the best targets at the best time. They're great units. They also have some utility against castles. If you're in a siege assault, if you're not auto-resolving it for whatever reason, you can use them to target units on the inside or target gates from a distance without your units getting exposed to archer fire. Number 3, we have light cavalry. They're accessible, they're cheap, they're fastest units in the game, tied with Yari cavalry. And unlike the other cavalry units, they are the only cavalry unit in the game that doesn't require war horses, so you can potentially get them from turn 1. And they're great thanks to their speed for kiting or baiting enemy units away, especially spear units. AI spear units will easily get baited by a light cavalry running near them. They can also pick off targets opportunistically, so if you see a wavering unit, that's your chance to start a chain route. Charge your light cavalry in there, send them into one target after the next. They also have a bonus versus cavalry, which is really useful against generals in the early game, who are slower than light cavalry. And it's also useful against heavier cavalry if you can prevent the other cavalry from getting a counter charge. So if you intercept them in the flank with light cavalry, they can they can punch above their weight. It basically does 80% of what heavy gear or cavalry can do for a much lower cost. Now the disadvantage is, considering it's so dependent on its charge and its melee stats are poor beyond that, you're gonna have to micromanage this unit a lot. There's gonna be a lot of charge cycling, and likewise, because they're cavalry and vulnerable to spear infantry, you need to be extremely attentive towards them, otherwise you're gonna watch them go poof when they get caught by a spear unit when you weren't paying attention. Especially given their small unit size, they're smaller than the heavier cavalry units, which I do find interesting. Number 2, Matchlock Ashigaru. Now the only reason this isn't at number 1 is it takes a while to get. You need to go for Gunpowder Mastery to get this unit, just like Fire Rockets. Unless you go for the non-bond trade port, but if you're playing one of the Eastern factions, it's going to be a long time before those Europeans arrive. But for your troubles, you get a unit that's potent against any target it can shoot at. It has a morale debuff which is extremely effective against Ashigaru for causing chain routes. It ignores armor, which makes it effective against higher quality samurai or hero units. Hero units will get absolutely decimated by a unit of Matchlock Ashigaru. They're cheap. They can be recruited from any province if you get the research done. They are just a great unit. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know how much I love them. I just absolutely love Matchlock Ashigaru. If my nightmares are filled with enemy bow samurai, my nirvana is filled with just Matchlock Ashigaru. And number 1, the best unit in Total War Shogun 2, fire projecting mangonels. Okay, I meant to say Yari Ashigaru. What else could you expect over here? Cheap, you can get them from turn 1, they're easy to replace. Yari Wall is essential to victory on any difficulty pretty much, not just legendary. It's the core of most strategies or all strategies in this game. Pretty much everything is gonna rely on Yari Ashigaru holding the ground on the most defensible part of the battlefield. And then on top of that, if their morale is an issue, they're gonna get experience pretty quickly, and if you have a stand and fight general and you combine that with a monk agent, they're gonna hold pretty well. And then there are upgrades that you can get from provinces that can give them more versatility and more longevity in the campaign. They will be relevant throughout the campaign to the very last turn. Now, of course, there are drawbacks. Being Ashigaru, they're fragile. They are basically impenetrable from the front in Yari Wall, but if any unit strikes it in the flank, it's gonna waver and possibly rout. And if it does rout, your Yari Ashigaru, the other ones, are probably gonna get a morale debuff, potentially rout as well. It could cause your entire line to crumble. Then there's also the lack of charge bonus, which you combine with their bad melee attack, making them quite tricky to use on the offensive. You'll usually want to charge and then hit Yari Wall at the very last second before coming into contact with the enemy unit, or bait the enemy units into a bad fight. So using a cavalry unit to bait out their spear infantry or their swords if you can, and your Yari Ashigaru are hidden in a forest nearby or on a hill. So you want to engineer proper fights to take advantage of Yari Ashigaru's strength on the defensive. They're a great unit. They're an absolutely great unit. Best unit in the game, hands down, undebatable. You can't change my mind about that. Now, if you're wondering why I didn't put long Yari Ashigaru over here, or why Portuguese tercios aren't on the list at all, it's because they're faction specific, so I disqualified them on that ground. And also, I wanted to make the video more interesting. You predicted that I would put long Yari and Portuguese tercios. So if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that sub button. Leave a comment telling me what video you'd like me to do next. Any video suggestions, I'll look into them. You can join the Discord to keep up to track on all the latest updates. Also, I'd like to remind you about the Shogun 2 Against All Odds series. So if any of my viewers, if any of you guys have a battle in Shogun 2 or Fall of the Samurai that you're having a really tough time with, drop the save file in the Discord and we will try to crack it. And if you want to check out some live gameplay, you can head on over to my Twitch channel. I stream weekly on Saturdays, Shogun 2. I'll see you all next time, guys. Thank you so much for watching.